Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry that the sequencing that we chose was not to your satisfaction. I was...
Order.
Good start, Kemi. Absolutely brilliant start by our Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Kemi Badenoch. But anyway, hello there, and I do hope you're all well. And I know it's a Saturday and I usually enjoy my weekends off, but you know, seeing as though Thursday it was the Bradford City Fire Memorial, I just wouldn't have had the time and I wouldn't have been in the right frame of mind to do any content. So I thought, well, I'll make it up to you and make sure it's done for Saturday. But anyway, as I'm feeling better, also thank you for the kind words and thoughts and prayers and kindness. Really appreciate it. Thank you. More than you will ever know. Anyway, things didn't get any better for our Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Kemi Badenoch, because as you saw there, she not only set off the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, into a mad rant. Well, the chair of the European Scrutiny Committee, Sir William Cash, wasn't too impressed either.
Before we begin the urgent question, I note that it is highly regrettable that the government decided not to offer an oral statement on this matter yesterday. Given the importance of this announcement, on such matters, full engagement with Parliament and its committees is essential. Before I call the Chair, I will remind the Government we are elected to hear it first, not to read it in the Telegraph, and certainly not a WMS is satisfactory on such an important matter. Hence, that I would always say, I'm now going to call the Chair of the European Scrutiny Committee to ask the urgent question. Sir William Cash.
Mr. Speaker, will the Secretary of State make a statement regarding the question of her failure to come to the House before she made the written ministerial statement and the press article today in the Daily Telegraph?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry that the sequencing that we chose was not to your satisfaction. I was...
Order.
Good start, Kemi. I can see a budding author in you, love. Later on in life, you could rewrite the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Classy.
That is totally not acceptable. No. Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State? I think we need to understand each other. I am the defender of this House and these benches on both sides. I am not going to be spoken to by a Secretary of State who is absolutely not accepting my ruling. Take it with good grace and accept it that members should hear it first, not a WMS or what you decide. These members have been elected by their constituents and they have the right to hear it first. And it is time this government recognised we're all elected, we're all members of Parliament and use the correct manners. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I apologise. What I was trying to say was that I'm very sorry that I did not meet the standards which you expect of Secretaries of State, forgive my language. But what I have been trying to do is make sure that I provide as much clarity as possible. So I am actually very pleased to be coming to the House to speak. I'm very pleased to be coming to the House to speak on this issue.
Not for long, judging by the fact that you practically upset everybody in the House of Commons on Thursday.
I have written a written ministerial statement to explain that yesterday we tabled an amendment to the retained EU law bill that amends the operation of the sunset in Clause 1 of the bill. This is a technical change. It introduces a schedule to the bill of retained EU law that will be revoked on 31st of December 2023. The schedule includes around 600 pieces of legislation provided by nearly all departments and spans a huge number of policy areas. This is in response to concerns raised in this House and will provide the legal clarity and certainty that has been called for. I would like to reassure my honourable friend that the 600 pieces in the schedule are not the limit of our ambition, neither the beginning nor the end, but actually over the past year, as Whitehall departments have been working hard to identify retained EU law to preserve, reform or revoke, it has become clear that time constraints have led to the programme becoming more about preserving EU laws than prioritising meaningful reform. That is why we are proposing a new approach. And Mr. Speaker, had I known the intense excitement that the House would have had about this issue, I would have come running, running to make sure that these technical details could be investigated by all and sundry.
Clearly not interested in running to meet our overexcited Sir Bill Cash, though, are you, Secretary of State? Don't know what I mean? Well, just keep watching.
But we are proposing a new approach, Mr. Speaker, one that will ensure ministers and officials are enabled to focus more on reforming rule and doing that faster. I'm pleased to say that the government has already reformed or revoked over 1,000 pieces of rule. In addition to the list of around 600 revocations in the schedule to the retained EU law bill, the Financial Services and Markets Bill and the Procurement Bill will repeal around 500 further pieces of rule, meaning we will have repealed not 600, but actually more than 2,000 pieces of rule by the end of the year. We are committed to lightening the regulatory burden on businesses and helping to spur economic growth, and our Edinburgh reforms of UK financial services include over 30 regulatory reforms to unlock investment and boost growth in towns and cities across the UK. Our regulatory reform announcement yesterday set out a long-term plan to reform UK regulation over the coming months. As a down payment on that commitment, we announced changes that will reduce disproportionate EU-derived reporting requirements that could save businesses around £1 billion a year. That will just be the first in a series of announcements the government will be making on reforming regulation to drive growth. And in addition to the schedule, the powers in the bill will still enable us to revoke, replace and reform any outdated EU laws that remain on our statute book by 2026. Mr. Speaker, this new approach will provide the space for longer-term and more ambitious reforms. It will also, members of this House, I no doubt will be pleased to hear, mean fewer statutory instruments will be required to preserve EU laws that are deemed appropriate to maintain. I again would like to reassure my honourable friend that we will still fully take back control of our laws and end supremacy and the special status of retained EU law by the end of 2023. This will ensure we are ending the shadow statute book and inappropriate entrenchment of EU law concepts in domestic statute.
Now you can imagine our extreme extremist Sir Bill Cash will now stand up now and then thank our Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Kemi Badenoch, for all her efforts to deliver the extreme Brexit that he and his ilk demand, and also he would like to take the opportunity to thank the Secretary of State for keeping the European Scrutiny Select Committee well informed. Over to you, Sir Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the standing orders of this House, the European Scrutiny Committee is specifically charged with examining the legal and political consequences of EU legislation. It reported on the 21st of July 2022, after a 5-month inquiry in support of the bill, and which was passed unamended by a large majority in this elected House and by the Public Bill Committee, all of which endorsed the government's policy on the bill. The Secretary of State has been asked formally and personally 3 times to appear in front of the European Scrutiny Committee since February. Why has she failed to do so?
Oh. Well, another unsatisfied customer in the weird world that is called Brexit Britain.
The amendments published today, apart from her very short written ministerial statement yesterday and her article in the press today, are not accompanied by any explanation to this House, despite the utter reversal in vital respects of the bill as passed by this elected House. Why not? The amendments have not been subjected to any analysis or questioning by this House, which is now essential, given the fundamental change in government policy. This House is being treated in a manner which is clearly inconsistent with clear promises already made. Will my right honourable friend specifically seek and make arrangements for the immediate deferral of the report stage in the unelected House of Lords, which is due to take place on the 15th and 17th of this month, so that she can come to the European Scrutiny Committee next week and answer our questions as provided for by standing orders, and provide a command paper before that report stage to explain the reasons for these fundamental questions of constitutional importance which are being made and which affect all our constituents, all our voters, and the coherence of our statute book and our legal system.
I always used to say when I hear these people who are still moaning about Brexit and this absolute car crash that it is, you won, Bill. Get over it.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable gentleman asked many questions. I will endeavour to answer them, although I think he knows that he has heard the answers before. But I'm very happy to respond on the floor of the House. We've had many conversations in private where we have discussed retained EU law. He has written to me about attending the European Scrutiny Committee, and I replied that until the policy was settled, I could not attend the committee, but instead...
Look at his face. He's not impressed, is he? A face you could chop meat on. In other words, she basically turned you down, Sir Bill. She's not interested on a date with you.
I could have engagement with colleagues, and that is what I have done. Of course, I'm very delighted to attend the European Scrutiny. I attend multiple select committees in my role, not just the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, but Minister for Equalities, and I'm very happy to speak to the committee. But there is no point, and Mr. Speaker, you will no doubt sympathise with this, having to talk about policy on the floor of the House before we know exactly what is settled. He claims that it is a change of policy. It is a change of approach. The policy is still the same. We are ending EU supremacy. We are ending interpretive effects. But what we are changing is how we're doing that. We could have ended up with an SI program, 450 SIs to preserve EU law. What I have done is make sure that business in particular, but also those parliamentarians who have raised concerns with me, including many of those chuntering on the opposite benches,
you're not going to win them over that way, Secretary of State. Where's your manners?
About how we can see clarity and have some transparency. And I have shown exactly what we are doing. I have listed all of the laws which we are removing, and I think that there is a key point to make here. The reason why we left the European Union was not just to delete EU law from the statute book, but to make our economy better. In order to do that, we have to reform the laws. If we delete the laws from the statute book, we will be starting from scratch in terms of bringing in the reforming primary legislation. This is a better approach. It was my suggestion to the Prime Minister. I'm very pleased that he accepted it. And I'm very proud to be standing here at the dispatch box showing that those of us who are Brexiteers can be pragmatic and do what is right for the British people. And that is why I'm very pleased to be explaining this change on the floor of the House today, Mr. Speaker.
Brexiters can be pragmatic. Try explaining that to Sir Bill Carsher. Oh, you can tell he wasn't in the pragmatic mood, was he? Or that impressed with her answer.
Shadow Minister Justin Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What an absolute shambles. I think this is the sixth different government representative at the dispatch box for this bill, and unfortunately for the Secretary of State, she's the one who's going to have to hear the words from us that no government minister wants to hear, that we told you so.
Absolutely. And now all the swivel-eyed loons are now fighting like rats in a sack. Well, the Brexit sack as well.
But we did, repeatedly, as did the Institute of Directors, the TUC, the Bar Council, and a host of other organisations. So it has to be asked, why didn't the government listen to those experts in the first place? It was completely unrealistic, reckless and frankly arrogant to think you could strike 4,000 laws from the statute book in the timescale set out in the bill. It's no use blaming the Blob or the Anti-Grove Coalition or the BBC. This humiliating U-turn is completely down to government hubris that has found itself crashing up against reality. So will she apologise to the entire House, to all the trade unions, business, legal and environmental groups who they told were wrong? Will she also apologise for announcing this policy change, not to the House, but to her friends, or should I say now her former friends, in the ERG, and then to the press? Can she tell us at what point did they decide on this change of course, and on what basis have they chosen the 600 regulations to be removed? Or is it 2,000 now, because she mentioned that in her statement as well? But whilst we welcome this humiliating climb down that sees the cliff edge go, this bill still gives enormous powers to ministers, and at last the cat is out of the bag about what they want to do with them. We're concerned that whilst the mode of delivery has changed, the destination has remained the same, and that's revealed in the Smarter Regulations to Grow the Economy paper released yesterday, which contains a clear plan to water down 2P and working time rights. We have warned time and again of the threat to workers' rights in this bill, and in response to that, the Minister said, and I quote, "The government have no intention of abandoning our strong record on workers' rights, having raised domestic standards over recent years to make some of them of the highest in the world." Well, we can strike that from the record as we can strike the Secretary of State's leadership hopes. How can a government elected on a manifesto that promised to build on existing employment law justify an approach that will water down workers' protection? It just goes to show that you cannot trust the Tories with workers' rights.
Here, totally agree. I won't trust this extreme Brexit Tory government to know how to use a pencil without using a manual.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I found most illuminating about this process is how little the front bench opposite understands what it is we're doing.
Yes, and you can add the rest of the country to that as well, Secretary of State.
And so they simply stand up and repeat their usual talking lines. We have made repeated commitments that we are not watering down workers' rights in this House. If he actually read and understood what we'd written, he would understand that what we're doing is maintaining workers' rights but reducing the bureaucracy that will save £1 billion and something that both workers and employers want. I know it's really tough and I know there are lots of words in it, but the truth is, I say to the opposition benches, I can explain it, but I cannot understand it for them.
Oh, how patronising. See, the thing is, Secretary of State, I would be able to understand the words you're using. It's just a shame you're not using them in the right order.
This is a very, very simple change in approach. We are having the exact same effects that we're always going to have. We are removing over 2,000 pieces of EU legislation, and we're removing over 2,000 pieces of EU legislation, and it is delightful to see the Labour front bench and the ERG, as they claim, to be on the same side for once. It makes me realise that if I am upsetting people on both sides, I am probably taking the pragmatic middle ground, and I'm very pleased to be doing so. There is, Mr. Speaker, so much opportunity and reform that we can take on EU law reform, and that is what this programme is about.
Yes, in Kemi Badenoch's mad world, Labour, who want, as far as I remember, want to be able to have more scrutiny in the EU laws to protect workers' rights, are now on the same page as the headbangers in the ERG, who want to chuck all the EU laws and chuck them all in the bin and be gone. I've got to admit, that's a very odd place you find yourself in it. Mental. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. And also, again, thank you for your thoughts and kind messages about the Brexit Memorial. Really made my day. Touched me. Thank you. But anyway, have a nice day. And until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.